All right, look, I assume you've had a bit of a chance to look at this piece. We're going to move on. The next step is, okay, this is what this person thought. You may agree with some of this, you may disagree. You know, as I said, take your own notes, collect these ideas. Now, the next step is to collect ideas off each other. And this is, so we're going to go beyond just the points that are made here. One way of, I think, doing it is, if we go back to our questions, I've just written up questions here where I think, you know, if you explored those points, they might relate to a positive or a negative. All right, so for example, let's just look at the first one, point 4. So it's not all the questions. Some of these points relate to strengths and weaknesses more than others. Point 4, how were the lesbian families recruited? Clearly the way they were recruited, collected for the study, could have, you know, there could be weaknesses there, there could be strengths, couldn't there? What are some of the, and to some extent some of these things are mentioned in this model text, but some of them are not, okay? So let's just try this one. What, the recruitment method, what do you think of it? Is it solid, or are there some, you know, problems with it? What do you think, Sadia? What are the problems?
Because they did the interview over phone, so in that case...
That's more of the interviews. What we're looking at is the recruitment, just collecting the people for the study. Okay?
They were volunteer from the metropolitan area.
Okay, so volunteers number 1. Okay, how might that? Give you a collocation here. We'll put it under weaknesses. Contaminate the results.
Yeah.
So just on this collocation, contaminate, to make dirty, isn't it? You know, you're doing an experiment and you've got a dirty test tube. It's going to produce, you know, unreliable results. So here, the way you collect your method can sometimes contaminate the results. So by just working with volunteers, how might this contaminate the results?
I don't think it will contaminate the results. Because you mean because they are volunteer, they don't really focus on the better result, to getting better result. You mean they are not really caring?
I'd say this is perhaps almost the opposite. Like if they are volunteers, so there's, you know, maybe 1,000 lesbians in a city, and maybe only 30 volunteer, right? Do you think there's a kind of those 30 just might be different in character from the others, and then that introduces another variable, doesn't it? Which would contaminate the results.
Maybe because they are more interested, they pay more attention.
Yes,
that's
right.
Yeah.
Volunteers are always motivated to achieve the best result, to demonstrate the ability to care about children and involved in process. In voluntary, if we will research participants in voluntary, it could be more broad spectrum of motivations and outcomes.
So, and we have to be careful here. I think we have to say might have, we're going to put it in the past tense, might have, because we're right in the past, or could have contaminated, or may have. Remember our modal use? We can't say definitely that it has, but it's a factor that might have contaminated these results. The fact that, generally volunteers are more committed, motivated to things, that probably suggests, notice the hedging, it suggests they might be more motivated when they have kids to really put a lot of energy into kids. Therefore, they're probably going to get a maybe more psychologically well-adjusted and academically better performing set of kids. You know. So here's this other variable. Now, the problem is, how could they avoid that? Could they do it without volunteers?
If possible, all ladies who have been inseminated could be state under the part that after that they should provide some participation
Right.
in
So
the
like,
research
right, like a condition
as
of,
a condition of the
right.
examination. Yes.
That'd be interesting. I think, at least
As it
within
was
the,
governmental program,
yeah,
it would be possible.
right, not in the US and not here. Well, because, you know, it would be a human right to equal access to, you know, in vitro fertilisation or yeah, and privacy issues. And this is where exactly you get into ethics and research ethics, you know. If you presented this idea to a ethics committee, because all research has to go through, they would just say, right, sorry, you know, we can't fund this, we can't approve it.
I
If
like
they
the Dr. House
consent.
serial.
But John,
So
if they
He was always
consent-
possible.
Sorry?
I like Dr. House serial.
Right.
He was always possible.
Yeah, right. And you know, in different countries there are different levels of this sort of stuff, aren't there? So you might be able to do it somewhere, but not
But
others.
if the volunteers, if the lesbian families, they consented, they say, we will let you to come to our privacy and
Right, now if you consent, then you're volunteering. You're back to where you were, aren't you? Yeah. So, you know, they've got this unavoidable problem. It seems like, you know, we can't say, oh, look, it's the fault or the kind of, you know, wrong intention of the researchers to sort of get a better group because they know this is going to influence results and they're sort of motivated by their political, you know, agenda. We can't say that, I don't think. It's just the nature of this study, and the nature of the people, and the limitations, ethical limitations, etc. They've got this problem, but it could have contaminated results. We just have to bear this in mind. So, do you see that? That's one of the points about the way they were recruited. The point made also by the writer here is, okay, they could have, one way of trying to get a more representative spread, they maybe should have used more media and tried to get the message out there, and then they might have got a wider kind of more average sample. You know, that's a good suggestion. Notice how this writer doesn't just criticise, but they're offering kind of what we call constructive criticism. So that's, if you can think kind of, it's a bit of creative thinking. If you can suggest a way, rather than just say the negative, but you can suggest a way how it could have been improved, that kind of picks up your score in a sense. So it's a combination of critical and kind of creative thinking here.
John,
So, yeah.
one more thing. I think when we use in the volunteers, normally in the society, most of the time people do the volunteering when they're not very busy. I mean, people not working,
Yeah.
and some people most of the time they're not very educated, kind of.
Not sure about the correlation of volunteering with education. I see your point that, yeah, they might be unemployed or whatever, although in Australia, the profile of volunteering is often, we have a very high volunteering rate, and it's a lot of people who are retired.
Yes.
So there you get well-educated retired people, less educated
But here
retired.
we talk that 35 years old, so we can't say
Yeah.
that in this.
The other thing is, it's a different kind of volunteering, because voluntary work is like, a lot every week, or, this is really, it's only 5 times in 17 years, they ring someone up and say, or send them an online questionnaire and say, how's your kid doing, isn't it? There's not a lot of time involvement, so it is a different kind of volunteering. Yeah, I don't think it impacts, in that way here. Yeah, but do you see how number 4? I'm just trying to give an example of how, if you dig into number 4, it opens up these issues for discussion and thinking, and it's maybe half. I think these little groups, the sort of 18, 19, 20, for example, are just about the discussion. So they got the results. Do you think that their conclusion from those results, the way they concluded, was valid? And this little package is about the quality of the journal itself, like the fact, is it peer reviewed, remember the citation impact level? So just the journal itself and its reputation, the ethos of the piece. So we could spend a little bit of time if you like. You can. I'll just read them out, just so it sort of refreshes your memory here. So I think we've discussed 4 sufficiently. 8, what group were the lesbian family teenagers compared to? Yeah, was the Achenbach, wasn't it? And comment on these 2 groups in relation to, and this is table 1. Remember these issues of table 1, and there were some imbalances, and some things were balanced, but there were also these imbalances. You don't say unbalanced, imbalance. 8, number 8. So socioeconomic status, race and region, and that was in table 1. If you remember, table 1 showed that breakdown, the demographic breakdown of the sample. Okay. 9, how was the data obtained from mothers and the offspring? I think the writer has partly commented on this. Is it survey? Is it checklist? Is it interview? Who did they collect from? 10, how was adolescent well-being assessed? Well, it's the Achenbach, isn't it? What's the reputation of this thing? 11, why was that chosen as the comparative group? 13, they did a lot of different comparisons across the groups. Why did they do so many? What were they trying to prove? Did that help strengthen the study or not? Then jump down to 17, the key results for comparison within the lesbian group. There was a lot of comparison within the lesbian group. Personally, I think that probably helped strengthen things, because they're trying, remember how we talked about how they're trying to get rid of certain variables like donor status, known or unknown, and they found there was no difference, so they could say, well, look, it wasn't that factor. It's not that kids in lesbian families, because they don't know their father, that creates the difference. They can remove that variable. So it was a kind of way of cleaning up part of the issues around the variables.
But you already said there's no significant differences between the gender differences.
That's right. They showed mainly from number 17 that there were no real significant differences across most of those groups, didn't they? So, yeah. 18, 19 and 20 are about, their explanations for things. So what do the writers hypothesise is the explanation for the higher scores in the lesbian group? What explanation do they offer for the lower levels of externalising problem behaviour, and how do they explain the difference? There's no how do they explain the fact there's no psychological difference between the adolescents whose parents separated and those who did not? So just, what do you think of their ability to explain their own data? Different kind of consideration. 21, a bit of self-criticism. Those 3 limitations. Do you agree with those limitations, that they self-assess? Do you think they should have included more? Maybe you found more limitations? Do you think they should have been more self-critical or less? What do you think of their self-criticism? 24, 25, 26, 27, the funding sources, the relevancy of that, peer review, the citation level, the reputation of the journal itself, and its ranking in the medical and scientific community. These things are things to take into account. All right, so I've just brought up those issues, hopefully into your consciousness. You can start any way you like, and we'll have about 20 minutes of free discussion around any of these points. And if anybody can think of anything, throw it out there, take notes off each other, collect further observations and further points. Marley?
The way you went through this,
Yes. Right. Yeah, it's got a very high ranking. They rank journals, and I think it's the second most cited journal in the field. If you Google Pediatrics Journal, you'll see the information about the journal. It mentions how cited it is. It's got a very high citation ranking. Okay, so look, just work your way. You don't have to do it in that order. Just wherever you've got a bright idea that you think would help the group about any of those things, just